From Studio A at MPTV in Milwaukee, MATC presents Stormwatch, a weekly video magazine documenting the activities at Milwaukee Area Technical College. On today's show, we simulate driving in Discovery World's Gem Car. We explore the hot topic of violence and the always dreaded question, where the heck can I park? We'll talk politics with the politicians, and we'll watch surgery being performed right here at school. All this and more right now on Stormwatch.
Hi, and welcome to Stormwatch. I'm L.C. Satterfield, and joining me today is Mary Olszewski, an instructor for the MATC program, the Surgical Tech program. Mary, thank you for joining me.
It's my pleasure, Elsie.
Now, tell us a little bit about the Surgical Tech program.
Well, Elsie, Surgical Tech program here at MAC is a 2-year associate degree program. And what the Surgical Tech does is they are a very integral part of the surgical team. They are that right-hand person to that surgeon, really getting their hands dirty, if you will. They need to be able to know their anatomy very well, the ability of sterile technique, and also to be able to think on their feet, because you know what, Elsie? There are no two surgeries that are alike, and you never know what's going to happen. So it's a very challenging career, very fast-paced, but we love it.
That sounds very interesting, Mary. I can't wait to take a look at it and learn a little bit more about it later. But first, let's take a look at some of the community's efforts to prevent violence, and then go over to Discovery World and check out some simulators.
Recently, MATC hosted a forum on violence discussing ways on how to prevent violent acts due to the recent increase on public violence. MATC was not the reason to hold the forum, but to address the community as a whole.
Supervision of your children is essential. Violence isn't something that you're born with necessarily. It's you learn it.
I mean, I think that's, children are the most impressionable.
Regardless of, I think, because you can't shelter your kids and expect them, just because you don't, even if you don't show them anything, for them not to learn it. It's necessary for you to be exposed to things and for you to see things, but it's also necessary in the aspect of now let's teach you about it. What are you seeing? Why do you, questioning your kids while they're seeing something like that isn't a bad thing. Or they can go up in their education beyond high school even, just can save in just that aspect, getting people who have educations, then they can get a job. So it's not just about, robbing people for money and things like that. And those also turn to help lower domestic violence rates, because if you can't feel like you can provide for your family, that's frustrating. It's definitely a reoccurring issue, and it is, in my opinion, also rising up. I think they covered it and had the open forum on it just like they've done in the past, and they should continue to do in the future. It's just something to keep everybody's attention on it.
And I think that by doing that, that'll, really help decrease the rate of violence, because then they won't be picking it up as quickly on such an impressionable age.
It's not something that should be swept under the rug, overlooked. It's something that should be brought up constantly and constantly challenged, looked at ways that have worked, what isn't working, what can we do better, and what's actually happening, the truth.
Over Easter vacation, I paid a visit to Discovery World. Next to the Les Paul House of Music, I found the Energy and Ingenuity exhibit. This exhibit is packed with information and the hands-on experience on all types of energy. Solar energy to nuclear energy, the exhibit walks you through how each one of these energy sources are valuable sources of energy. By pressing this red button, you can start the nuclear reactor simulator. The simulator gives you step-by-step instructions on what happens at a nuclear plant.
Reactor now in view. At bottom of vessel are uranium fuel rods, immersed in water.
From the nuclear reactor simulator, I paid Eva a visit by the Van de Graaff generator.
This exhibit is the Van de Graaff generator, and it's about electricity and electrical currents. And so the giant metal tube has a mechanism inside of it that creates static electricity. And so kids press the button and then they come up and they get zapped. And then if they leave their hand on it, their hair stands up straight. And it's kind of funny because if you touch someone else while they're touching that, the electricity goes through both of your bodies looking for somewhere to be grounded, and you get a really big shock. And it's kind of a funny one to watch people do.
After that shocking experience, I was told there was a couple of other simulators at Discovery World, the most popular one being the helicopter flight simulator. After waiting for a long time, I decided to check out the next simulator. This simulator is the driving simulator. I ran into Eva again, and she explained a little bit about it.
This is the GEM car. It's a 2 degree of freedom simulator, so it's a driving simulator for to demonstrate a safer way to teach people how to drive. And it moves back and forth and then side to side, and you can drive on roads, you can drive on all sorts of different terrains and stuff. It's pretty cool. Yes, I drove it and it's really hard. Like, it looks like it's gonna be really easy, but the steering wheel is really sensitive, and so it's hard to stay on the road. But it's mostly about teaching people how to take instructions. And the idea is that a driving instructor could sit in the car with them, and then they would just get used to, like, I think, just the various buttons and everything, and after having to steer. Unfortunately, the most people that are attracted to it are the ones that are too short to drive it. So we spend a lot of time having to turn people away, which is really sad because you have to have your hips about 32 inches tall in order to reach the pedals, and so there's a lot of little kids really excited to drive it that cannot. But the best thing is to watch adults try and drive it, because they think like, oh, I got this, it's so easy, it's just driving, and then they're the worst drivers.
So next time you're at Discovery World, say hello to Eva and check out the Energy and Ingenuity exhibit and the several simulators on hand.
Those sure look like fun. I wonder if I would be able to handle that car.
Yes, it looks tough, but you know what else is tough? Being a surgical technologist. You wouldn't think about it, but standing for long periods of time is very physically demanding. Let's learn a little bit more about it right now.
And after that, we will show you how it is possible to get your driver's license back and the steps you need to take in doing so.
Sponge stick.
Hi, my name is Pat Stapleton. I'm the Surgical Tech Program Coordinator for our program here at Milwaukee Area Technical College.
Take a peanut mix, please.
The surgical tech is a person that works directly in the operating room. We work with the surgeon and other people as a team in that room. We're working very closely with one another.
You get to form friendships and bonds within a lot of teamwork. You get to learn how the lab runs, how OR room runs, just the kind of basic skills that we'll need that will further us on in the future for this program and for our career.
We actually took a trip to the hospital to sit in on the open heart surgery, which is awesome. We got to sit in the room and learn about what we will be doing in our role once we graduate.
We start teaching them instruments right away, and they continue to learn instruments all the way through till their 4th semester.
I myself am aspiring to be a PA, a physician's assistant, and that's going to be a few years down the road. But I do plan on getting my SA certification, which is after a couple years of working on the field as a tech.
I can work in the hospital, I can work in the clinical sites. Gives me the opportunity to look to move on if I want to be a PA, a nurse, different opportunities.
The surgical tech has to be a very knowledgeable person. They need to be very alert. They need to be able to focus for a long period of time. They learn sterile processing first. They learn how to wrap sterile items. They learn how to use the autoclave, and then also how to retrieve things out of the autoclave.
Sterilization is very important in surgery. All of our equipment needs to be sterile that we are using in a procedure. On an occasion, an instrument might drop, and at that point, we may need it back immediately. So the steps of what's going to happen, first of all, the circulating nurse will immediately come and pick up that instrument. They will take it into a sub-sterile room and go ahead and clean it from debris or anything that might be left on it. Then they will place it into an autoclave and put an indicator. It's very important to have that indicator to tell us that the autoclave is working properly. They will go ahead and set the settings to what it needs to be run at and close the door and go ahead and run it. At that point, once the instrument has been run, then the nurse will come into the room and ask the scrub tech to come out to that autoclave and retrieve that instrument so we can get it back on the field for immediate use for that surgeon.
The Center for Driver's License Recovery and Employability was set up in March of 2007, and the various partners include Legal Action of Wisconsin, Wisconsin Community Services, which is the organization for which I work, the Milwaukee Area Technical College, and the City of Milwaukee Municipal Court. The main reason people lose their driver's license in Wisconsin is for failure to pay a forfeiture, which simply means if you get a speeding ticket or any other traffic offense and you don't pay the ticket by the due date and you don't make alternative arrangements, you'll be suspended for failure to pay a fine. The biggest thing that we tell our clients is that you have various tools to prevent this from happening again. We recently had a law changed, actually about a year ago, that allows or mandates payment plans within municipal courts. So what that does is, for the first time, any municipal court you walk into, if you have a speeding ticket and you can't pay the full, say it's $140, you can put together a payment plan with the court and pay every month, so therefore your license won't be suspended and you still get to pay off your debt. What we do is help people who are low income to get their licenses back, and that usually means going to various jurisdictions, different municipal and circuit courts, to reopen cases, to argue the cases so that there can be a payment plan in place or community service or some type of way to recover the license. And our clients tend to have multiple jurisdictions, so it's not as simple as just going into one court. It's, we've seen over 10 courts for one person. So once that's all done, one is then ready to reinstate, and they may still have obligations to various courts, such as payment plans, but as long as they continue to pay, their license will be valid.
Mary, you were right. Being a surgical technician looks intense. But from the sounds of it, you guys have a lot of fun and create really strong bonds.
It sure is. But getting your driver's license back without the help of the Recovery Center looks even more intense. Good thing the students have them around to help.
The instructors and students of higher learning establishments are always at the forefront of social change. From Kent State to UWM, educated individuals do their best to enlighten the masses. This holds true even at MATC and throughout the community as citizens question more than ever the role of government in our daily lives.
It was recently exposed that Milwaukee Police Chief Edward Flynn was involved in an extramarital affair with UW-Milwaukee journalist. He faced no disciplinary action as the Fire and Police Commission ruled the matter does not affect public safety or police operations. However, many are wondering why this public official is keeping his job despite committing a felony. Adultery is still on the books in Wisconsin as a Class 1 felony, although it is rarely enforced. This brings up the debate on morality crimes and why we need to legislate consensual behavior between adults, especially when they're not always enforced.
Spending all this money to legislate what adults do behind closed doors seems, and to what should be their own personal choice.
Bill Nook is an economics instructor at MATC.
It's a huge waste of society's resources, and if we continue to do this, we'll just add to our economic problems.
Joe Zarneski is a political science instructor at MATC and was formerly a Wisconsin state senator.
But I think government has an obligation to protect society as a whole. And that's why we have these laws. And it's not necessarily to protect us from ourselves, but to protect society as a whole from someone who might be driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and therefore endangering other people who are sharing the road with that individual.
Dan Barker is president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. He says it will take free thinkers to create real change.
Free thinkers, meaning religious skeptics or religious liberals, have always been a part, if not a major part, of social change, because it takes the heretic to challenge the existing tradition and the status quo, to challenge that, to have the courage to go against the flow, to improve. Things like women voting. None of the founders of our country thought women should vote. It was not even a part of it, but today it's unthinkable that women couldn't vote.
Each of us has the right to live our life the way we see fit, not the way someone else does, as long as those choices don't deny someone else of an equal right. The practical ramification is that victimless crime laws create more crime.
People who become addicted to drugs result to other violent crimes in order to get money to buy those drugs. So in those instances, society has an obligation to regulate and to, in many instances, criminalize that activity so that people don't engage in that and as a result endanger other people in order to support their addictive habit.
And there we do use the drug laws as the perfect example. 100 years ago, there were no drug laws. Now there are. We have a war on drugs that we've had for 40 years. Over that period of time, hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent. Hundreds of prisons have been built and filled. And the rates of narcotic use and abuse haven't changed one iota. What we have created is 1.2 million gang members. Organized crime thrives on it.
Tim Narens is the Libertarian Party candidate for Congress in Wisconsin's 2nd District.
So if it was a choice between drugs or no drugs, we'd probably choose no drugs. You don't get that choice. You get the choice between drugs or drugs, gangs, crime, and violence. So the side effects of victimless crime laws are almost always worse than the social problems that were created by the activity itself.
We can't just let our own government play us like a piano.
Well, that's our show for today. Thank you, Mary, for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me come on by.
And everyone, make sure to check out the Surgical Tech program here at MATC. We'll see you next week for another episode of Stormwatch.